Well, hello there, and welcome to the very first episode of Media Makers. I'm Zach Bennett. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this show. Let me lay it out on the table really quick what we're going to do here. We're going to talk to people who create media, whether it's professionally or just for fun. I don't care if they've been a TV photojournalist for 30 years, make movies on the side, or if they just started making TikTok videos and have their own podcast 3 weeks ago. It doesn't matter to me, because people who do this kind of thing have a passion for it. You wouldn't do it otherwise. There's an innate art, there's an innate creativity, and like I said, a true passion among people who create things for other people to consume with their brains. Kind of like a chef creates food and gets to watch people enjoy it. I know for me, whenever I've created something in the media and gotten to watch people consume it, it has been a very fulfilling experience, and I want to talk to people who have had that exact same experience. And whether you're a creator or just a consumer of media, you are certainly welcome to listen in. Hopefully you'll take some inspiration from the people that I talk to over the next however many episodes we'll do here. My first guest is a guy that I have known for a long time. We didn't actually know each other for the longest time, but we got the pleasure of working together for a little while. And it's my friend Cam Cornelius. Now, Cam has done a little bit of everything in media. He grew up in the music industry. He's been on the radio. He's been on TV. He's been a video journalist. He's been a voiceover artist and voice actor. The guy's done pretty much everything there is to do. So I thought, there's no better first guest to have on the show than Cam Cornelius, and here he is. Cam, how long have we known each other?
I don't even want to mention that on...
Well, here's the thing. We didn't actually know each other.
It was before puberty.
Yeah, well, maybe. We didn't actually know each other for the longest time. We were just acquainted. We ran in the same circles. We actually went to the same private school. Cam was several years ahead of me. And so when I was in 5th or 6th grade, Cam was a senior and was on the radio. And we all thought he was the coolest guy because he was on the big hit top 40 radio station. And then, you know, we became social media friends for a little while. And then we wound up working together for 8 or 9 years at Ramsey Solutions, and you actually helped me get that job. Actually, I wouldn't have the job if it weren't for you.
Yeah, they were looking for a producer. I'm like, I know the perfect guy.
Yeah, I was struggling in Alabama looking for some new place to work, and it just so happened that you know, prayers were answered and you came calling. And I remember the day it happened. You sent me a Facebook message. I had finally just said, you know what, I'm just going to stay here as long as I can. I'm content. Everything's good. I had actually given up on looking for a new job, and then about an hour after I had come to that conclusion, you texted me with a Facebook message and said, "Hey, I think I might have a job for you." And that was 12 years ago or 11 years ago. Yeah.
Yes. And you've created many a best of since then.
Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. We've moved on. Awesome. But I'm moving into video now, so I'm doing a lot of video editing, and it's been a fun transition for me. But we'll get more into me later. I want to ask about you.
Sure.
I think you were born with a microphone in your hand, were you not?
More or less, because my parents were entertainers. My mom was a singer. My dad was, he was a lawyer at the time, but he became a singer, and they went on the road and started singing, and eventually moved to Nashville. So yeah, I've been in music or voice since as long as I can remember.
And what age did you move to Nashville?
Oh gosh, it was for first grade. So
you were definitely here when it was old Nashville before it really blew up. I mean, I was too, because I grew up here as well. But talk a little bit about growing up in that entertainment world as a kid, because I know, and we'll get into. I've got one specific thing I want to ask you about, and you probably know what that is. But just like growing up in that world with parents in the entertainment business, and how that inspired you to become a media maker.
Yeah, it's a different world, as you know. The most of the work gets done at night. I mean, I spent many nights in music studios on Music Row, just, with my parents recording different artists. My dad and mom discovered Alan Jackson, Sawyer Brown. So we were, spending nights in the studios recording these people in Nashville and Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and all these different places. So I spent my childhood knowing from my dad and mom what actually sounds good and what makes a good hit record. B, just being enamored by all these, 24 and 48 track audio boards and so forth. So I'd kind of go and learn how to run audio from the different engineers my parents used. And so I became really just kind of invested in the whole entertainment industry. And then growing up and with like Alan Jackson teaching me how to water ski and, playing basketball on the porch with, the guys from Sawyer Brown, Mark Miller and them. It just the whole love of two things, entertainment and electronics.
Yeah.
We're just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just emblazoned in my soul from a very young age. Yes.
There you go. And just growing up on Music Row, I bet that had to be cool. You talked about Alan Jackson taught you how to water ski?
Yes. He actually, my
Did he write a song about that, teaching his daughter how to drive a boat? Were you the inspiration for that?
No, I was not the inspiration for that. The story was at the time my dad discovered Alan, he was working in the mailroom. I believe it was at CMT or one of those places like that. And he was a great musician. He did a great George Jones impersonation. I remember doing that in the studio. But yeah, he didn't have a place to keep his boat, and we had an extra. We lived on the lake, Old Hickory Lake at the time, and we had an extra area in our boat dock. So he kept his boat in our boat dock, and he'd come out on the weekends, and we'd go out and fish and ski and all that kind of stuff. So
that's cool. Yeah. Hey, I've known you for as long as I have it. I never knew that. So that's very interesting to me. You've told me about another story with you and a country music star that happened in an elevator. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, my parents' office was, when we came to town, was in the United Artists Tower. And it was
in Nashville at the time was like the really the biggest building in that part of town. It was like the 7-story huge building for that.
A bunch of houses turned into offices, and then this big high rise. And so we were on the top floor of the United Artists Tower, and I remember the Judds would come up and get an appointment with my dad and all these people and stuff. And one day Kenny Rogers was coming up. And he got in the elevator, and we're sitting in there. I'm there with my mom, and I was a huge Spider-Man fan. Still, let me see back here. Still am a huge Spider-Man fan. Always got something. So anyway, I had just gotten a Spider-Man grab hand. I don't know if you ever remember those things, but it's like this pole with a Spider-Man hand on the end of it, and you would grab the other end of the pole and the hand would close. And so you could grab things with the Spider-Man hand. And so I'm just in the elevator. I was little at this time. Little at this time. Here's Kenny Rogers in front of me, and here's the hand, and I just kind of grab him, and he about hit the ceiling. My mom was very embarrassed. I don't think realized what I did or whatever, but patted me on the head and then went into the office. And so, yeah.
Well, once you got in, when did you actually start working professionally? And was radio your first thing?
No. I spent a lot of time between Los Angeles and Nashville as a kid. And, my first real professional project was an album I had out with Sonny Schroyer, Enos from the Dukes of Hazzard. We did a children's album together called Back in Hazard. And I did 3 or 4 songs with him on the album. And we ended up doing a music video together, which was, if you search real hard, you can find it on social media. And I was basically playing the part of his son in the music video and dressed up in a little Dukes of Hazzard Enos uniform. And we were singing a song called There's No One Quite Like Grandma. It was one of the first videos on CMT. It was a very young startup network out of Hendersonville, and they actually recorded the entire music video and ran it on at that time called CMTV. So we did that. We were on the Grand Ole Opry. We toured all around. We did radio and TV, and so that was kind of the start. I was like 9 years old at the time, so that was like my.
You mentioned the early days of CMT, and then this is kind of off on a tangent here, but the little piece of trivia is that they beat TNN on the air by like 3 days. They had this big grand launch plan for TNN because it had the Grand Ole Opry, and it was the one that had the big distribution. And then, dag nabbit, that little competitor out of somebody's garage beat us by 3 days. And then they wound up merging several years later. But just a fun little story there.
The building, I still pass it. It's still there in Hendersonville, and it's a gun store now. but that was the building where CMT was launched out of.
Interesting. Well, tell me about when you did start working in radio, because that's when I do remember listening to you on Y107. You were Ricochet, right? When that was your name?
Pew, pew, pew. Yep, Ricochet. And I got that name from an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon called Ricochet Rabbit. And so I didn't...
Well, it worked well, with the Irish thing, Ricochet.
Yeah, Ricochet. And... actually before that, I went through some iterations because I was interning at Y107, who was at the time J-Core station, which then got bought up by Legacy, which then got bought up by what ended up being today like iHeart.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was interesting being in high school and interning there. And I remember one morning.
And this was, just for context, I mean, this was like the big flamethrower number one station in Nashville. This was a big deal in the late 80s.
And people still talk about it on social media. The thing that just fascinates me about that radio station is it wasn't just big in Nashville. People all over the radio industry talk about it. And it was one of those, as we used to say, an innovator in the age of imitators. It was a very, I feel very blessed to have been part of that at that time, because
it was kind of like the smaller market. Yeah, it was like the smaller market equivalent of a Z100 in New York.
Yes, yeah, it was a Z100. A lot of the guys left there, and they went and started the Power Pig in Florida, which caused a big stir as well. But that was all based on what was accomplished at Y107. So the Power Pig was completely based on what had been proven at 107. So and I encourage anybody to look up Y107 Air Check, and there's plenty on social media where you can listen, and it's just yeah, it was special at the time. It was special. Yeah.
Cuckoo! Hope you're on time. It's almost 9. Serving the universe.
The most music and more. Lock it in and rip the knob off.
Y107.
I remember the day they changed the format and it became The River, which it still is today. I was heartbroken. I was like 14 or 15 at the time, and I remember listening to that. But
I know Murfreesboro in college, and the program director actually called me and said, "Hey, we're flipping formats today." I remember I was like on Old Fort Parkway, right where I was, when he said, Y107's no more. So
and you didn't stick around when it became The River, did you?
No, I was actually, I played the first song on The River.
Did you really?
Yeah, I played the first song. Didn't talk. I played the first song. I believe Gator was the first one to actually.
It was Gator and Lisa Loeb.
But yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because I was there with Cameron Atkins was the engineer, and I was also doing some engineering duties there. And so we flipped the switch. I hit the first song from the new board. So
that's interesting. Yep. I've never, I got one of those format change calls one time too. And it was not long after I had started working at Star 97 here in Nashville. And I had been there only like 6 weeks. And I was so excited about it because I had only been on stations that played like old country music at that time. And so this was a hot AC station. It was playing current music. And I was excited. I was like, yes, I get to play something that people are listening to, right?
Yes.
And I got the call. And that was when 96.3 switched to Jack FM overnight. And then there was this void in the market for an oldies station. So I got the call that said, oh, we're going to change the format. Star 97's going away tomorrow. It's going to be Oldies 97 now. And we still want you to stick around. So we're keeping the whole air staff. But during that brief run, when we became Oldies 97 is when I got to work with Coyote McLeod, who you got to work with at Y107.
Yes, Coyote, man, a legend, a complete and utter legend in Nashville radio. And actually beyond Nashville, he did a big song back when Wendy's had Clara Peller, Where's the Beef. He did a parody with her called Where's the Beef, wrote a whole song about it, and that went nationwide.
She orders a hamburger, well, of course, and they brought her some buns with a choking small horse. Big buns, big buns. She thought she's getting one heck of a deal. $1.99 for a whole darn meal.
I have the 45 in the next room. I still have the 45.
Hey, son. Yes.
I think it's got the Y107 logo imprinted on the sticker too. Yeah.
It was something working with him and Rhett Walker, who incidentally I do radio imaging now as well and voiceover. Yeah. And I work with a group out in Seattle. I'm the imaging voice of Star 101.5 in Seattle. And they're with the same group that Rhett last worked with. So, I got to talk old stories with some of them and, mutual connection of Rhett Walker.
And another mutual connection we had is a guy we unfortunately lost a few months ago, Bumper Morgan. Yes. Another great guy who I know we both enjoyed working with. He taught me so much. I worked with him briefly at 104 The Core in Nashville. He was doing Sunday mornings. He was doing like 6 to 10, and I was coming in to board op the Titans games that started at 10 o'clock. And so I would get there at like 7:30 and just sit there and just become a sponge and talk to him about old radio stories and watch him do his thing. And he taught me so much in the short time we got to spend together. And I was just devastated when I heard that he passed away last year.
And the same year, he was production director at Y107 when I was there. And he taught me a lot about radio production, and we actually co-produced when the Gulf War happened. We co-produced this little montage of music to What a Wonderful World, and that was something that we just kind of did together. So that was a good memory, just like sitting down and working on something with him. But yeah, he taught me so much and was just such a great mentor. And I remember whenever he'd get into the mic, because his voice wasn't extremely, it was about like mine or whatever, but he would get onto the mic and his voice would drop like 100 octaves, right? He would get like so close to the mic and be like, 1, 2, 1, 2. And he'd always
he would like drive his knuckle into his temple.
Gonna drill a hole through his head? What's going on here? That's 1, 2, Bumper Morgan. Yeah. So you couldn't hear him. That was the thing. It was the end product was so boomy on the radio, but when you're in the studio and he was actually recording it, it's like, is he saying anything?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. It's just amazing.
He was so great. And if you search for Y107, as you suggested a few months ago, you'll find a lot of his stuff, his air checks. Where he was.
Bumper Morgan he was also the production manager and the voice guy, along with Ernie Anderson. Was like the national voice guy that they hired, but it was Bumper, half the voice of the station was Bumper, half of it was Ernie Anderson. So another radio and voice legend.
And you and I, and again, we never really worked together. We never knew each other up until through all this time. But we also both had the experience of working at Way FM for a brief period.
Yes.
What did you do there? You were on the air, right?
I was on the air. Yeah, I was. I pulled a little bit of like the last hour of drive time into the night. So I did like 1 hour. No, they were syndicated. We were on several stations in Florida and in Michigan, and there were several states that we were at. But they'd put online like Fort Myers and those areas and so forth.
O&Os that they had,
Yeah, so I was a quote unquote network air personality is what they call
I got to do that too when I was working for Westwood One a few years ago on the Nash Icon network. And there's just something that was both fun for me and maddening at the same time to be, because you're like, this is so cool because I'm recording this break and it's going to air everywhere from Huntsville, Alabama to La Crosse, Wisconsin to Nashua, New Hampshire to San Francisco. We were on in all those markets, but there's a problem with that is that you have to be generic enough to play in all of those markets.
That's true.
And that was the thing for me. We were told we don't want you to have a dialect. We don't want you to say anything. And it was even as simple as this, Cam. It was, don't say up in New York because we're in New England and it's down in New York from there. And it was just, and I would, thankfully it wasn't live. I would track all of those a few minutes ahead of time or even a day ahead of time. But it was just, and that's finally kind of what drove me to leave that, because it wasn't fun anymore at that point, because it was like, I'm getting to do what I want to do, but when the only thing I have to prep is this liner service where it's talking about, hey, did you hear Burger King has a new sandwich? It's just like, I don't want to talk about this, but that's kind of what I was forced to talk about, because it had to be so generic. You couldn't do anything local. And then at the same time I was doing that, I was also live on the station in Nashville that was not taking the network feed. It was branded the same, had the same music, but it was hyper localized. And on that station, we had no dead air time to talk about anything. Everything we had to do was on the ramps. And so I had 6 seconds to tell everybody about a remote that we were doing that day. And if you showed up, you could get Kenny Chesney tickets and everything. And it was just like, it was kind of crazy.
I kind of feel a little bit of what you're talking about there, because I grew up, like I said, in the music industry. So I began bringing on some people like, we had like Jars of Clay on my show one night and so forth. And, I got them to sign my Carmen album and stuff like that, and I would bring some people in, and there was a concern that since we're on in a lot of markets, and they wanted us to feel local in those markets, they're like, well, these big stars wouldn't come in to some of these local markets. Maybe we ought to not bring in some of these stars. And I'm like thinking, you're kidding me. But they'll know it's not coming from the local station if you bring in some of these stars. It went that far.
Yeah, because
now they don't care.
There's an illusion that when you do this national voice tracking, and I get it, I understand the purpose behind it, but they want to maintain the illusion that you're in that city.
In that city, right. And they're like, well, Jars of Clay would never come to, this little town. Like, why not?
Maybe they would.
Exactly.
If a local concert promoter paid them enough, they would.
Right. And I thought it was such a, like a kind of a waste, because we had all this talent and all the people right here where we are. So let's be able to bring them in and have fun. But yeah. So again, if that was a Nashville only thing, then we could have done it. But unfortunately.
Who's the most famous person you've ever interviewed on the air?
Boy, probably John Kerry for, I don't know if that's the most famous. I mean, he's a political guy, but when I was TV news, so I don't know.
And that's where I was going to lead to the TV news thing. Yeah. That's a good natural thing, because you did work in TV news for a long time. I know you worked at WSMV and WZTV here in Nashville. Anywhere else? Was it just those two?
Just those two. Yeah, just those two.
And how did you get this? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I had been working as a co-host and a traffic guy on 102.5 The Party. Yeah. And doing that with Scotty O'Brien, and we're still friends today.
Another guy we both worked with at separate times.
Yes. And I tell you what, though, that was a very interesting gig as well. Like, I had more fun in that gig because it was the listeners were so involved in the story that we were creating in the morning show. Like I remember one time, my car had broken down, and I went to this car auction in Clarksville to get another car. And I had this check that I needed to get cash to pay the deal. And I go into the bank, because my local bank wasn't in Clarksville. And they're like, sorry, we can't cash this check because you don't have an account with us. And then they looked at the check and the camcorder, are you the traffic wizard on 102.5? Yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, we'll take care of you right now. Well, it was so hilarious because the listeners were just so involved in that morning show, and we had a cast of characters. The listeners actually became regular characters and would tell these awesome little stories. We had Officer Fuzzy and a bunch of characters, Roofman Mike and Glenn and everybody. They would come on every morning and just tell funny stories, and it was a fun morning show to be a part of. Anyway,
and there's a relaxed atmosphere there. We'll get back to the TV thing. Now that you've gone down this path, I want to talk to you about that. There's a relaxed atmosphere at a station like that with local ownership, where you don't have this corporate mandate that you have to talk about this and you have to hit this and all this, and you just had an owner who would be like, yeah, whatever you guys want to do, you're a morning show.
Yeah. And that was it, and we'd go out and we'd bring several listeners out and, go on mini golf, or we'd go have a lunch or a dinner, and we'd, get a limousine, pick up some of the regular listeners and just go around town having fun. It was almost a little bit of a callback to what we would do in Y107, because it was just a fun, like, okay, this city is your family. And go out and have fun with them and make them your family. Fun is the bottom line. And so the party was the party, just like it was a very appropriate name. Remember, I got to sing on stage with Inner Circle, singing Bad Boys and all that. the guys that did Bad Boys, which at Riverfest in Clarksville. And because we were, so there were a lot of parallels to 107, because I got to do a lot of introducing artists on stage and things when I was at 107 as well. So it was the party didn't achieve the notoriety of Y107, but a lot of the behavior and the way they worked was the same.
Had a very loyal audience. Was also hampered by a lot of signal issues. It was kind of more like a Clarksville station than a Nashville station, trying to play to the Nashville market, and that's part of the reason it didn't succeed to the level that the other ones did. But that's a story for another day. You were doing traffic reports?
Yeah, I was doing traffic reports. I worked with Metro Networks for a while. And I did traffic reports on several radio stations, actually.
I interviewed with them one time. I didn't get the job.
When I left Way FM, I'd actually met, my last day at Way FM, I met John Hall, who was the guy that was hiring at Metro Networks. And so I ended up working at Metro Networks like a couple weeks after I left Way FM. And picking up a bunch of stuff there. And then I picked up on-air duties there. I actually started also doing some the first stuff I ever did on Capitol Hill. So some of the political reporting I started doing there.
Nice.
With Paul Ladd. And then I also picked up engineering, and I did their local engineering work there. As a matter of fact,
done so much stuff
from downtown and we moved to Franklin, the offices there, I completely gutted downtown and built up the studios they had in Franklin. So
interesting.
Or Brentwood. Yeah.
I also did traffic reporting for a little while, I guess about 2 years worth down in Huntsville. And I guess with Metro, you had different information gathering. You probably had some sort of even online in the early days of the internet, with Nashville. Like I remember the police department had a report of all the wrecks. You could just hit refresh on the browser and see. In Huntsville, my setup was I was in just a tiny little windowless production room. I had four different I had 4 different police scanners set up in each corner of the room, and I had memorized which ones, which agencies came in on which scanner, so I could just tell from which direction it was coming from where the wreck was, and I would be doing the traffic reports in real time. And yeah, I still hear those police scanners in my head, and that was 12 years ago.
Oh yeah, me too. I mean, especially going from that to news. Yeah, the police scanner chatter. Just, you get home, you want to decompress, and all you hear all night is scanners in your head. It's a phantom scanner sound. I know exactly what you're talking about because I still hear it sometimes. So yeah, it's crazy when you're listening to 4 or 5 scanners and you have to be able to tune into the important stuff. It's challenging.
Yeah, especially on a snow day in the South. Woo, those were fun. My last day doing traffic in Huntsville, it snowed, which was about a once in every 3-year occurrence. And I was just like, this is God giving me a farewell gift on my way out the door. Yeah. So you worked in TV, and you were doing camera, right?
I was doing camera. I was hired on at the NBC affiliate. The thing was that it paid a whole lot more money than radio was at the time.
Oh yeah.
Because I made more money at 107 than I did at the Party, even though 107 was several years earlier. That was because I was doing remote broadcasts every night and all that other stuff, and I wasn't doing a whole lot.
Those add up.
And two, the talent fee and all that stuff would go 100% to the person doing the remote back in the 107 days. By the time you get to the Party days, well, no, you still get paid out of your paycheck. So all the fees and stuff go to the station rather than directly to the talent on top of your paycheck. So there's the difference there, and that's just how radio is and corporate has evolved over time. But yeah, I was hired on actually from a reel that I had produced when I was in college at MTSU, and of course my lifelong friend Kyle Thigpen, he worked at Channel 4 as well, and he brought my name up, showed him my reel, and they called me in for a job, and I started working there on overnights, but I said, because I had done overnights at 107 for a period of time. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do overnights, it's going to be 1 year. I will do 1 year of overnights for you and no more. So you either promote me or I'm out of here. So a year to the day, they they took me off of overnights, and I went from overnights to actually being the investigative team photographer. And part of the reason was just because of my love of electronics. They saw how much I knew about electronics and stuff. And so I was able to kind of develop a lot of hidden camera kind of stuff and wireless transmission and all that kind of stuff that we needed for investigative reporting. And so that was very fun. Got to do a lot of good things during that time. For instance, there was a whole scandal about construction companies not putting rail guards on the side of the roads in deep enough so that they would fail when somebody hit them in an accident. And it was very dangerous. And we actually exposed that and got a lot of hidden camera video of them not putting the guardrails in correctly and so forth. And that got called up before the legislature, and a whole bunch of people were brought up on charges in that, and it actually fixed a problem. I loved doing that. That's
a great example of how local media can still make a real difference.
Mm-hmm. And it was big. We actually got a national headliner award for that, which is one of the highest honors you can get in journalism, besides the Edward R. Murrow. So we did that. We did a lot of stuff with 10 care and people not getting the care that they needed. And so there was a lot of good stuff. And at that point in time, it was a good time in TV because we had the ability and the authority to juggle several projects, but work on projects months at a time. And when they would finally come to fruition, then we'd get them out on the air. That kind of started changing. And I don't know the entire reason behind it. But the focus became more, if you're going to do an investigative piece, you need to do it in a day. And it just kind of, the whole thing kind of changed. News kind of changed. And I love the people I work with, but it became about more selling fear, like, what's in your refrigerator could kill you. Find out tonight at 10. It's like, well, tell us now. If there's something deadly in our refrigerator, let us know. And it became more about, okay, chasing fear. And I wasn't up with that. There's enough fear in the world without having to, manufacture or focus on it.
Yeah.
And media has the power to cause fear or disband fear. It's got the power to do both. So,
and it's changed so much in the last 15 years. News media.
But it was the whole industry. It wasn't just the station I was at. The whole industry was changing at the time. So
and news media has done that everywhere. It's become so opinion based, and what plays on the major networks is opinion. It's that fear. It's that play into what people want to hear. Right. There's an interesting thing going on at WGN America right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've paid attention to this, but they're doing a thing called News Nation. They launched it back in September, I think. And News Nation is a nightly newscast that they draw from all of the Nexstar stations around the country as their newsroom. So they're leveraging these local newsrooms around the country to deliver them this national newscast. And they produce it at WGN in Chicago. It goes out on the old superstation. And like Channel 2 here in Nashville is part of that network. So if there's a story in Tennessee, it's Channel 2 or Channel 6 over in Knoxville or whatever where their stations are. And nobody's watching it. Mm-hmm. They launched it in September. It's getting equal or lower ratings than the syndicated stuff WGN was showing before. They're already starting to back off of it, and they went with an opinion show. And they were trying to reinvent because, when Fox News started, their whole thing was, we're going to be neutral. Their slogan was, we report, you decide. And then they got away from that. And now they're off to the right, and MSNBC, CNN are off to the left, and there's nobody neutral anymore. And so it was interesting that WGN was like, we'll be the neutral party. And they actually got rated by that media rate company. I can't remember what it's called, where they've got that scale of here's the most liberal, and here's the most conservative, and here's the most reliable, and here's the most bullcrap. And it was like perfectly center. They said it was incredibly reliable and neutral, and nobody watches it.
It's a shame.
As a cameraman, there's a sense of pride around that, I'm sure, getting the right shot, being there in the moment to catch a news story happen. And think about how much everything has changed, because when you were doing news, not everybody had a phone in their pocket that they could just jump out and take video with. We look at what they say, I assume it still is, the most videoed moment in human history, the attack on the World Trade Center. Yeah. And almost all of that footage was professionally shot from some sort of roof cam that one of the networks had in New York on the top of a skyscraper, or the photographers down on the scene. Almost everything, every piece of footage we've ever seen of that event was professionally shot. And then you flash forward 20 years to what happened a couple weeks ago at the Capitol. And almost all of that footage was shot amateurly. Some of the by some of the people even doing it. And just as a camera person, as someone who has experience in that industry, what are your feelings on that? Does that drive you mad that everyone can capture it and that anybody is a photographer now, or does it make you proud?
It did for a while, I'll tell you, because it's very interesting seeing how all that changed. When I was the photojournalist, I mean, yeah, it was like a front seat to history. There were a lot of things. I don't even remember the siege on the Capitol, not the one most recently, but the one on the Tennessee Capitol when the governor was trying to implement taxes, and all the people came and were circling the Capitol with horns, and people were chanting outside and stuff. I mean, that was amazing, but it was at that time it wasn't. There were a few bad apples in it, but it was actually citizens coming out to show, hey, we're the government. We don't want the government taxing us even more in Tennessee. And they listened. The legislators listened.
Mm-hmm. They couldn't help but hear all the horns honking.
No. It was very interesting. And I remember Phil Valentine saying, because there were those people that were trying to say, these people are dangerous, et cetera. And Phil Valentine was like, they're getting mad at a bunch of Andy Griffith type people out here just voicing their concern. It was for the most part, when I was right in the middle of it, I wasn't scared for my life. I wasn't this. It was a bunch of people who were out there who were not being heard, and they wanted to make sure that they were being heard, but nobody was, a danger at that point in time. Again, I don't know this most recent Capitol thing. I don't know, I wasn't even there. So I don't know how that differed. I know there are some similarities just from being in it. But anyway, that the whole point is being in the front seat of history. Like nothing like that has ever happened in Nashville really since. And so you got to see those things up close. When Al Gore was in a very, very tight race with the presidency, I was actually at the Tennessean watching newspapers come off saying that Al Gore had won. And so actually seeing a headline there that nobody else saw except people that worked at the Tennessean, because they were printing off that, both candidates just so they would have the paper out in time. And so all those other ones they threw away, but it's like just seeing that headline, nobody else got to see it, So being in the front line. Now, what started happening when I was in news at the tail end of it became this VJ kind of thing where they would make the reporter also the videographer. Also, the reporter was also the cameraman. And what came along with that was, with new technology coming out, was smaller cameras, all this kind of stuff. And that was, I believe, the entrance into the acceptance of the citizen journalist, as we call them today, because it was less of a crew going out. And the importance, you got to think about this, the importance of a news crew going out is that you can watch each other's back. Because you're a lot of times you are in dangerous situations. Mm-hmm. And with the video journalists, they were the cameraman and the reporter and so forth. So if somebody, tries to come up behind you and club you over the head or whatever, you're not going to see it. That was kind of a danger. And anyway, that kind of took off anyway. And as technology became cheaper and better, the news was more accepting of, oh wait, we can get this for less money from somebody who doesn't work here, because they don't know how much to charge for it. Mm-hmm. We can get eyes all over the place, and really, who cares about quality? Because when I was a photographer, we would get called into the office if we had a jump cut or we had a thing. Things had to perfectly match, and there had to be a smooth transition between shot to shot to shot to shot. Now that's all out the window, and those things were learned over hundreds of years of making video, and what I think has happened is a lot of people immediately get a video camera, and then that's just kind of what's expected now. Is I feel like we're going to have to go through a relearning of techniques. Certain media still follow that. Like, I don't know if you watch like The Mandalorian and shows like that, John Favreau and those guys still follow those techniques. And if you'll notice, the shots are smooth and go from even a rough shot. There's a reason for the transition. But on local news used to be that way. And now a person can be here, and in the next shot, they can be here. Just a click. And it's like, how'd the person jump from this point to this point? And we've lost that. We've lost the art, I think, of video and putting it together. So it's more information first and only, rather than the art of information and visuals melding together seamlessly.
Does it drive you mad as a video editor that you have spent years perfecting that craft, and now anybody can just do it on TikTok, and it's not going to look as good as something professionally done, but it might be viewed millions and millions of more times?
No, like I said, at first it bothered me a little bit, but now it's just like it comes down to what the consumer wants.
Yeah.
Now, does the consumer know what they're missing out on? I don't know, but if you're sitting there getting a million views on TikTok with jump cuts everywhere and all this other stuff, hey, more power to you. You're doing stuff the audience likes. I really feel like there's going to be a resurgence or a relearning of the techniques. I feel like we went into this little thing of, if you don't look at your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And so I think people are going to try to continue to up their game, and I think they're going to rediscover some of these things. And
even just in the last year, the pandemic with Zoom, I mean, that's what you and I are talking on right now. But professional organizations are using Zoom to do interviews, and so the quality of when you watch a show like even one of these major national shows like Rachel Ray or Kelly Clarkson or the Ryan Kelly show, they'll do a Zoom interview and it'll be jumpy. I was watching Jimmy Fallon last night. He was doing an interview with Justin Timberlake, and it was jumpy, and it was just like, I don't expect this from NBC, but we're forced into that. And do you think it's desensitizing the audience to what is quote unquote professional anymore? Do they care?
There's also a science to it, which is interesting, because I'm remembering way back when I did a couple videos for America's Funniest Videos, AFV, way back when I was at Y107 with Dave Park, and we did a bunch of skits. And one of AFV's tenets that they went by, even when they shot their own video, not in the studio, but when they shot out in the, with their own guys, was to make the video look amateur. Because we want that connection to people shoot their own amateur video, so they've got a connection to amateur video, is what they said. So I think that might also be what's playing in the mind of a lot of these people. It's like, hey, we're like you, so be friends with us, watch us. We're not this lofty thing that can do stuff you can't necessarily. We're on the same playing field with you. So there's a psychology to it as well, where if it looks more amateur, then people may identify with it a little more. But then there's also the psychology of if I can do this, why do I want to watch more of what I can do? Why don't I want to watch something that is, professionally done and looks professional? Because there's a for me, like I said, The Mandalorian, I would much rather watch The Mandalorian as it is than shot on a, little home video camera and, jump cuts everywhere. So there's
like the first Fantastic Four movie that was the bad one.
So I don't know if there's this dichotomy of like, okay, entertainment, like things like The Mandalorian, there's going to be this extreme, amazing production quality stuff, and then there's going to be this low quality stuff that is also very popular, and just like the country now is like, when we were growing up, people were right or left or center, and now the country is so divided, which I hate. And I'm thinking too that maybe these types of media are also divided. We'll have things like The Mandalorian here and things like TikTok here, and they've got their own space and their own audiences.
Yeah.
And that's okay for media.
That's funny because
I don't think that's the country though.
It's funny that you mentioned that because in the trailer that I made for this podcast that I made yesterday, I talked about, would you rather watch The Mandalorian or a bunch of TikTok videos? Or both at the same time, like me.
Hilarious.
Yeah, that's so funny. Oh my gosh. Hey, let's take a hard right turn as we start to wrap this up. What you're doing now, you're a voiceover guy and a voice actor. Yes. Yeah, tell us about that. What's the joy you get out of doing the voice acting stuff and the voiceover work?
It goes back to how we were talking earlier about the radio days and being behind a mic, and I missed that so much. We worked together, at Ramsey for a while, Ramsey Solutions. Yep. And while I was there, a friend of mine who back when I first did voiceover, this is my second round in voiceover. I first discovered it when I was doing radio, and I got a couple of jobs, went into Film House, recorded for the Armed Forces Network, and got a check. I'm like, you mean we can get paid for doing commercials? Like, so it was good money. And, so anyway, I did that for a long while. And when I got into TV news, the voice just kind of went off to the wayside because the TV news ended up taking all of my time with the investigations we were doing. And I just didn't have any time for it. So 10 years later, Joe Lesh calls me up. He's like, hey, remember this audiobook we did? Well, we missed a page and it got shelved for 10 years. And you think you can match your voice from 10 years ago because we want to release it? I'm like, I can try. So I went in the studio. We recorded it. It was a good enough of a match. And for the next year, Joe hounded me to get back into voiceover. And so, I was there and enjoying doing life-changing video at Ramsey, but I still had this, from a young age, doing the performing and then being on the radio and all that stuff. I missed it. I missed the acting. And so I started going out and learning how voiceover had changed and getting back into the connections and doing all that. And, there came a point in time where I couldn't juggle both the video job and the voice. It was, I was working full time at both basically, and it wasn't fair to either one. It was like I got to really make a decision. I was going on my lunch breaks to studios to record commercials, and then coming back, having just had a, snack for lunch or whatever, doing that stuff. And so I ended up going full-time voiceover, and it's been amazing. It's so great. And it was before the pandemic, but a lot of the voiceover stuff is, right out of my studio right here. I can connect all over the world. And so when the pandemic hit, I was thankfully already working from home, and my workload and all that didn't change. The kind of stuff I did changed a bit, and commercials increased a little bit because they weren't out there shooting as many on-camera actors. They were going to animation and using more voice actors. So the work actually increased a little bit during the pandemic, but it's been a true blessing. And not to say I still do some on-camera stuff whenever that's available. Right before the pandemic, I did a little stint on Tell Me a Story, the ABC show. I played a photojournalist on that. And so I do on-camera stuff every once in a while, industrial videos and stuff, but it's mostly, I'd say 99% voice work for companies like Nike. I did some voice work for The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which I love that show. It was just amazing to be able to do that. Tennessee currently has a Tennessee Department of Health is running a campaign with a bunch of cartoon viruses and telling people to get vaccinated. And I do all the male voices of the viruses for that. And that's a huge campaign. Like, they're covering buses with the characters and running TV and radio. And so, that's just fun stuff. Dollywood, Hardee's, Carl's Jr., you name it. I've probably voiced it, since I've gone full time, and it's just
that's awesome.
It's fun. It's really fun, and video games.
And it's fun as somebody who knows you. Sometimes when I hear your voice on things, I'm like, oh, that's Cam. I know that guy. So we'll be watching TV, and I'll hear your voice on something. And I'll be talking to my wife. I'm like, that's Cam. She's like, yeah, I know Cam. He's our friend. Yeah.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
She's not as impressed as I am, and I've worked in media for 20 years, so
I don't know. Sorry, Audrey. And the video games too. It's just like there's this closing of the gap between cinema and video games, and they're becoming so cinematic now, and it's so fun to work on them. One of the most recent ones that I've worked on was a video game called Cloudpunk, and they continually update it and make it better. It's a very cyberpunk type of world, and I'm about to record some more with them, because one of the characters I did on that has just become like this fan favorite character. Is android who thinks he's a private investigator. He's like, of all the ladies in Navalis that came into my door, it had to be Pasta. And he talks like that every time, he talks in this film noir type deal. So I love exploring those different, being able to do the different voices and the different characters and the versatility in voice acting, where one day you can be like that private investigator. The next day you can be the, 1940s announcer. And the next day, you can just be, this heartfelt, this is why you should use our hospital, because we care about you, and it's just, it's an amazing, or for, Hardee's, the all in thick burger, they wanted a, Southern fried voice for that. So, it's so fun to be able to diversify so much and do, commercials, TV shows, phone recordings, video games, and also be able to diversify your voices. So you're not just the same plain vanilla thing every time. There's just so much diversity in it that it's just so fun and so amazing to be a part of. And the community, the voice community, I would say even over the on-camera acting community, the voice community is supportive of each other. When one of us, needs help or advice or whatever, everybody's just first up to offer advice and help. And it's not this kind of stab you in the back kind of thing that, that some industries experience. Everybody's there to help. We just had a colleague, Brad Venable, very prolific voice actor, very nice guy. He just passed away recently. And as hard as that is, seeing my friends in the voice community just lift up this person and then just take care of Katie, his wife, during this time, setting up scholarships, setting up donations so that Katie is going to be okay financially in the interim when all this stuff's going on. The community just sticks together unlike any other community I've seen, and it's like a brother and sisterhood. It's amazing.
That's great. Because you said, it can be, especially in other forms of media, there's only so much space, and so there is like a turf war. But it sounds like that's not the experience you've had.
It's not the case, and in acting in general, it can be like that. It can be very cutthroat. That's just the business. But in voice acting, I found that, and you can ask any voice actor this, and they'll say the same thing, because that's the way it is. It's like, okay, I didn't get this part, but you know what? You were better for that part. I'll get the next one. It's like that. It's not so, there's no backhandedness. Those that don't speak gibberish say backhandedness. You know, it's very supportive, and everybody kind of knows that if we help each other, then all the boats rise together, and that's how it is.
Man, I've had so much fun talking to you today. This has been a blast reconnecting with you. It's been too long since we've chatted. Tell our listeners, all 6 of them, where they can find you.
If you need any kind of voice work, any kind of voice work, just log on to voiceoverdude.com. voiceoverdude.com, and you can see the body of my work, some of the stuff that I've done, and I'd love to help you make your endeavor a success by being your voice.
Voiceoverdude.com. Instagram, Twitter, where are you there?
Instagram is videocam. Twitter is @videocam.
I love that name. I had to get that out of you, because to be a videographer with the name Cam, I mean, it's like it was ordained, right?
I decided to keep those handles. I almost dropped those handles and went to VoiceOver Dude, but I'm like, the majority of stuff I voice is still on video, so I figured it still works. So yeah, video cam. You can
video cam
up there as well.
I love it, man. Well, Cam, man, it has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being my first guest.
Yes, thank you for asking me.
I really hope this thing takes off, and we'll look back on this one and maybe revisit it, several years down the road when we're in international success. But man, it's been such a great time talking to you, and I wish you all the success in the world with your voiceover stuff. And I know where to go: voiceoverdude.com if I need something.
Yep.
Thanks again for being a part of our first episode. I am truly honored you chose to spend your time with us. I know there's a lot of things competing for your eyeballs and your ears, and the fact that you listen to this all the way through it makes my heart warm. So thank you so much. And I don't know who our next guest is going to be, because we're just getting this thing off the ground. But I do hope to have an answer to that very, very soon. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on Media Makers.